want our country back. What's happened to our country? Well, in the wake of the phony 9/11 false flag attack, we got Homeland Security. We got the Patriot Act. We got the rules of the game of the NSA fundamentally changed. And in response to that, we had several NSA whistleblowers. Many of them had worked for decades for the NSA. We had William Binney, one of the first whistleblowers, had worked for them for over 30 years. He was technical head with global responsibility of at the NSA. And he was one of the first whistleblowers. He has said that we are this close to a police state, holding his fingers together. That was about a year ago. About 6 months ago, he said, we have a police state. And he's not the only NSA whistleblower saying this. Because what happened in the wake of 9/11 was they began looking at Americans with dragnet surveillance. The security state, the police state, the militarized industrial complex turned itself inward on America. Remember, the founders said, Madison said, if tyranny ever comes to this country, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. And that's true. And it has come to this country. And I want my country back. There's a ballot measure that they're trying to get on the ballot in New York City. They have 53,000 signatures, reported on that last week. It's the New York City Coalition for Accountability Now. Wouldn't you want to know if a building with a minor fire, a skyscraper that was more than 20 stories tall, if there was a minor fire on a building and it just happened to fall down? That's never happened anywhere else in the world, in history. And it didn't happen there. We heard the owner of that building say, pull it down. We know something was happening with that, and we know that they'd prepared it well in advance to have that happen. Now, we have some NSA officials say that the U.S. has turned into a Stasi Germany or a Soviet Union. This is an article up on Infowars.com. We have a senior NSA executive, Thomas Drake, saying this. He told Washington's blog that the U.S. has adopted the East German Stasi model. He says, collect it all, know it all. That's the NSA's model, and it's actually the Stasi's model. It's not just know everything. We have to be able to keep everything that we want to know, even if we don't know it yet, or even if we don't know that we want to know it, right? He says, I keep shuddering because I'm intimately familiar with the East German surveillance state mentality. And of course, they point out in the article here that a lieutenant colonel that worked for the Stasi in East Germany said based on his experience, he agrees. And of course, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who grew up in East German, under the Stasi in East Germany, says that the NSA is exactly the same. See, that's the problem. And we have the NAFTA model right now. Charlie Sheen was trying to get Obama to take an honest look at it. Maybe he didn't know what this guy was about. We want to give him the benefit of the doubt, perhaps. Instead of taking an honest look at that, what Obama has done is the same thing that they did with NAFTA. Enact it. Let it sit there inert for a very long time. Then act on it. That's what we see with the NDAA, with the indefinite detention. First, make the law, but don't act on it right away, because that'll get people upset. It's outrageous enough that you have destroyed the borders and unified Mexico and America and Canada. Don't really act on that right away. Let that simmer in people's minds. Now the idea that the entire world is at war, that is something that they want us to simmer with and get used to it. That's why they're not doing anything. That's why they're letting that simmer. But now we know what their model is. We now know that they're going to do this exactly like they did with NAFTA. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with more news about the security state.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Hey, now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
Be joined in the third hour by Dr. Stan Monteith, and that's going to be a very interesting discussion. We're going to talk about things like medical access to good, clean food and drugs, what the basis of that is, as well as ethical issues. So we're going to talk about that. We might even get his take on what's going on at the border. But right now I want to go back to what happened this last week. We had an interesting protest at the NSA data center in Utah. And of course, this is a data center that uses enough water and electricity to power a reasonably sized city. So there's environmentalists who are pushing against that. We also have people from the Electronic Foundation, what is that? The EFF, that is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And of course, they advocate freedom in the internet and other places. We shouldn't lose our basic rights. And there you can see that blimp if you're watching this. That was a Greenpeace blimp. They did this in conjunction with the EFF and also in conjunction with the 10th Amendment Center, which is a libertarian think tank. This is what I think is very encouraging when we see groups from very different perspectives and who would probably disagree with each other on a lot of different issues coming together on this fundamental issue. As we just heard in that special report that Alex put together with Charlie Sheen talking to President Obama at the beginning of the Obama administration saying, we want our country back. We have to come together on these fundamental issues, things that fundamentally affect our freedom. If we lose everything into an East Germany type of police state, as NSA whistleblowers have warned, we're going to lose it for everyone. We're not going to have any discussion about some of these other policies. We fundamentally have to have a country that is based on the rule of law, on a respect for individual liberties. And if we don't have that common foundation, we have lost everything. And that's what we were talking about just before the break, a story that's up on Infowars.com, where NSA officials, whistleblowers say that the U.S. has turned into Stasi Germany or the Soviet Union. That's what William Binney, who spent decades watching these countries for the United States government, that's what he said when he saw everything turn internally, the security state, the police state turning internally, the surveillance turning internally after 9/11. He said, I've watched for decades the Soviet Union. I've watched East Germany. I know how they operate. We are doing the same things. And now Thomas Drake, one of the other whistleblowers at the NSA, has said the same thing. Now, even some of the corporations who have been cooperating with the government are now taking note of this. First, we see that Germany is giving Verizon the boot over the NSA spying scandal. They're kicking out Verizon because of the NSA wiretapping of Chancellor Angela Merkel. And of course, she grew up in East Germany. She knows where this all leads, and they're coming down very hard on American corporations because they see them allied with the NSA, with the national security state that's developed here in America. And of course, Microsoft also came out last week and said, the future is bleak if the government continues its unlawful data collection. Well, it's not just Microsoft's future that's going to be bleak, because they're going to lose business and are losing business just like Verizon. Microsoft was one of the very first companies that participated in the PRISM program, as we learned from the leaked documents that Ed Snowden put out. They were in there in 2007. They were a founding member of this kind of crony espionage that's going on. And they're going to lose their business as well. People are turning elsewhere to get their computers, but it's a bleak future for us if we don't pull this down. That's what we're concerned about.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. We're going to be joined at the bottom of the hour with Alex Jones. He has a special report on food, and this is one you're not going to want to miss. Food, the ultimate secret. We're also going to be joined in the third hour by Dr. Stanley Monteith, and he's going to be talking to us about medical issues, about ethics, about a variety of topics. He's going to be with us in the third hour. But I want to let you know that this hour is brought to you by the products that we offer at InfoWarsLife.com. And right now we have a special on Fluoride Shield. It's 25% off. Fluoride Shield is an exclusive blend of key herbs and ingredients specifically infused within the formula to help support the elimination of toxic forms of fluoride and other dangerous compounds like mercury, chlorine, and bromine from within the body. Right now you can get that at InfoWarsLife.com for 25% off. That's a limited time special. So go there right now. That's InfoWarsLife.com. Now, just before the break, we were talking about an article up on InfoWars. Top NSA officials say the U.S. has turned into Stasi Germany or the Soviet Union. We need to understand that it's not always hyperbole when you say somebody is becoming a Nazi. It was not hyperbole for William Binney, who spent decades watching East Germany, watching the Soviet Union, seeing how those police states, those surveillance states treated their own citizens. And when he saw the NSA turning inward in the wake of 9/11, when Thomas Drake saw them turning inward, they spoke out about it. They became whistleblowers. Very important what they have to say to us. They're telling us that we now have a police state, that we are doing the same things that Stasi East Germany did, that the Soviet Union did. This is something we need to pay attention to. Other people are paying attention to it. In Germany, where they know what that looks like very well, they are pushing back. They're eliminating American corporations who are in bed with the American surveillance state. They don't want to be spied on, but Americans don't think it can happen to us. So we reported that Germany is giving Verizon the boot because of the NSA spying scandal. Microsoft is worried about this affecting their future because they've been seen as someone who has been cooperating with the government for a very long time. We see that there was a pushback, a very interesting coalition of Greenpeace, of the EFF, a privacy organization, as well as a libertarian think tank, the 10th Amendment Center. They all flew a blimp over the NSA Data Collection Center, which is there to collect and store everybody's conversations worldwide. Uses a tremendous amount of energy, but it also is burning our rights right in front of our face. So that was a protest that happened last week. And of course, last week it also came out that Keith Alexander, who's the former head of the NSA, and he was the guy that was there while Snowden got the documents and released that, now he's taking that resume, and I don't know how that really enhances his resume. He's putting himself out there as a consultant, offering to consult to the banking industry and others for $1 million a month. Well, he didn't have any takers, so he dropped it to $600,000, which I think is still pretty high. But this is the interesting thing. A congressman, Representative Alan Grayson from Florida, was suspicious that Alexander has anything useful to offer at that price. And so he said that is unless he's peddling national security secrets. This is a guy, Keith Alexander, who went to Bilderberg while he was still head of the NSA, meeting with them in secret. Was he peddling secrets there? Perhaps. Now, of course, he was also there this last year in Copenhagen. This is something we see frequently, a revolving door. The way to push back, we need to listen to these people who are warning us as to where we're going, these whistleblowers from the NSA. And now we have whistleblowers coming out as well about the VA scandal. In an article on Infowars.com, 50 VA hospital workers claim retaliation because they blew the whistle on horrors that they saw. Now, this is an article that's essentially from Washington Times. It says, when Valerie Riviello, a nurse at the VA in New York, saw the clinic restrain a sexual assault survivor to a bed for 7 consecutive hours, she went over and released the woman. The next day, she was removed from her post as a senior nurse manager and given a full-time desk job that kept her from having any contact with patients. She was eventually reprimanded, is facing a 30-day unpaid suspension for releasing the woman. Now she is one of more than 50 whistleblowers who say that the VA retaliated against them for trying to do their jobs. She said, the nurses are afraid to complain or report anything. They have 100 things that they've noticed, but they've seen what is happening to me, so they're afraid to report anything. See, that's the concern. Always when people report wrongdoing, the whistleblowers themselves are attacked. That's why we have whistleblower laws. And yet we have Obama, who has essentially come against people who are blowing the whistle, who are exposing criminal actions. Look at the reaction, for example, to the Edward Snowden leaks. Look at the calls for his imprisonment, for his execution. What did he do? He exposed that our government is violating the law. The FISA Act was created in the wake of the House Church Committee hearings. Those were brought by Frank Church. He was concerned that at that time, in the 70s, that the intelligence community was getting out of control, that it was turning internally, as we've now seen it do in spades. And so as a result, they had these Church Committee hearings. They created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And one of those things was to make sure that if somebody really was in America, really was participating in a terrorist event or an espionage event, that they had some channels where they could go through and have a court procedure where they could get a search warrant, but still kind of keep it secret. Well, the problem is secrets and spying always turn inward on their own people. And so now we see that the FISA court has become this secretive rubber stamp for the administrations that have followed it. All they have to do is go to this court, and it's not a court at all. It's a single judge. There's no adversarial hearing. There's no jury. There's no lawyer arguing the other side. One lawyer from the administration goes to this FISA judge, which they call a court. He issues rulings, and it's not bad enough that they're doing that. What they're doing is they're keeping these rulings secret while pretending that it's modifying the rule of law, that it's modifying our constitutional protections that are recognized, our rights that are recognized under the Constitution. Now, Obama, far from defending rights, of course, has used the National Espionage Act of 1917 more than any other president combined. I think it's been used something like, and I'm losing track of it because he's using it so frequently, I think he's done something like 9 out of the 9 times it's been used since 1917, he's done 6 of them, I think. Maybe it's now 10, and he's done 7. One of the people that has drawn the ire of the administration is James Risen of the New York Times. And he has an article that just came out. Before the shooting in Iraq, we had a warning about Blackwater. And of course, we have that article up as well as a link to it on Infowars.com. Blackwater threatened to kill State Department officials in Iraq. This guy says, I took Mr. Carroll's threat seriously. We were in a combat zone where things can happen quite unexpectedly. Well, what was that threat? Well, it turns out that this is weeks before they shot 17 civilians in Baghdad's square in 2007. That was Blackwater guards that shot 17 civilians in Iraq. Weeks before that happened, they sent investigators to the area to see what was going on. And Blackwater's top manager there issued a threat to these State Department investigators. He said that he could kill the government's chief investigator and, quote, no one could or would do anything about it as we were in Iraq. Now, the American embassy officials sided with Blackwater. So when this investigator from the State Department goes there, is threatened by Blackwater that he will kill him, and they go to the American embassy officials in Baghdad, they side with Blackwater. And this is a group that has gotten a contract at that time worth more than $1 billion. And these guys do whatever they wish. And it was just a few weeks after that that they shot and killed 17 civilians in the square. You talk about blowback, you talk about unintended consequences, and yet this is really what they want. They want continual war. They want to foment disruption and unrest everywhere. That's why we had what happened in Benghazi, giving weapons to these factions. Now, of course, you've got, just as we see here in this example, you do have people who are compartmentalized. They think they're doing the right thing. They want to do the right thing. And yet we see that when you've got an investigator who is trying to do the right thing, he's shut down by the American embassy. And he came back and said, you know, it looks like these Blackwater contractors think that they're above the law. They see themselves as above the law. That clearly is true. It says they created an environment of liability and negligence, and as we saw just weeks after that, we had a massive massacre there in Iraq, which is still having repercussions. You think they're going to be able to keep Iraq under control? You think that they're going to be able to turn it into a democracy? Is that really our job to do that anyway? I don't think it is. Many people don't think it is. Even here at home, we should look at how this is going to come down. The same things that happened abroad are now coming home. We see the militarization of the police. We see them being given the same types of training and tools and the same attitudes that we saw with these Blackwater guards. And it's getting to the point now where we had, here's a blog, torianbrown.com. His title is, "The Militarization of the Police Has Gotten So Out of Control That It's Captured the Attention of the Mainstream Media." As my son Lance said, it's gotten to the point where the mainstream media can't ignore it anymore. That's why they're talking about it. And we should be very concerned about what happens with the military-industrial complex and the way they are militarizing the police. This is something, the same thing that happened in Baghdad is going to be happening in America. And one of the ways they're going to use it as an excuse is they're going to take these drug cartels that are now encroaching into the United States as part of the war on drugs, and as it gets more violent, you're going to see ever-escalating amounts of violence in America. We need to roll this back.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield True Nascent Iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.